The room was cold and quiet, with only the soft humming of the crystal lamps above. Princess Nerea stood near the large window, staring at the stars that filled the sky of her home planet. Zheria, her long silver hair flowed down her back, and her violet eyes were full of tears. She already knew something was wrong. Her parents had been in the council room for hours. Speaking in low voices with strange humans, she was only 19 cycles old. But she understood more than they thought. Her family had lost their honor, their trade with Earth had failed, and now they were drowning in debt. She heard whispers in the halls of disgrace, of punishment, of exile, and now she feared the worst when the tall wooden doors opened. Her mother entered first. Her face was calm, but her eyes did not meet Nerea's. Behind her came her father, proud General Cavor. His face was hard like stone, but he walked slowly. Like the weight of the stars sat on his shoulders, Nerea. He said, voice flat, "We have made an agreement." Her heart stopped. "What kind of agreement?" she asked. Her father didn't answer. It was her mother who stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You will be leaving. Tonight," she said, "you are to be married." Nerea's breath caught in her throat. Married? To whom? A human, her father said, a man named Elias Vorn, a war hero of their people. Nerea took a step back. "You sold me." Her voice broke, like I'm a thing. "No," her father growled. "We saved you. This was the only way. To repay the debt and protect our name, if we didn't agree, they would have taken everything, even you, by force. I don't care about honor." Nerea shouted, her voice shaking. "I didn't agree to this. I don't even know this." "Man." "You don't need to," her father said coldly. He accepted the terms. "You will go with the human envoy. They will take you to him." Her mother tried to speak again, but Nerea turned away. Hot tears ran down her cheeks as she looked once more at the stars. She had dreamed of freedom, of training to become a warrior like her father. Now she was just a payment within the hour. She was dressed in a formal robe of deep purple, her family crest embroidered on the sleeves. She didn't speak another word as she was guided to the landing pad. A small human ship waited, its engines humming softly in the night air. The envoy, a woman in a sharp black uniform, nodded politely but said little. Nerea sat in silence as the ship lifted off the ground. Her world grew smaller through the window, and her heart felt heavier with every mile. Hours passed as they crossed space. The woman finally handed her a small data pad. "These are the details," she said. "You'll arrive at Outpost 9 on the edge of Terra Nova. Captain Elias Vorn will be waiting there. He's aware of the arrangement. You will be safe." "Safe?" Nerea whispered. "What does that mean?" The woman looked at her for a moment. "Captain Vorn is not like the others. He didn't want this either, but he agreed to protect you." Nerea didn't reply. Her mind was spinning. What kind of man agrees to marry a stranger just to clear someone else's debt? She fell asleep with her arms around her knees, curled in the corner of the passenger bay. She dreamed of her home, of running through the fields with her younger brother, of sword lessons with the old masters, and then she dreamed of chains, cold metal wrapping around her wrists as a faceless human pulled her into the dark. She woke up when the ship touched down. The door hissed open and a rush of cold wind blew inside. The planet was covered in snow. The sky above was dark blue, with 2 moons shining dimly. The woman stepped outside first. Nerea followed slowly. Her boots sank into the soft snow. The air was bitter and sharp. In front of her stood a tall man wearing a heavy coat and a metal glove on his left hand. His hair was dark and messy, his beard short, and his eyes unreadable. This was him, Elias Vorn. He didn't bow or smile. He simply nodded. "Welcome," he said quietly. "You must be tired." Nerea looked at him, expecting anger, or hunger, or cruelty. But instead, he turned and walked toward a hidden path. Beneath the ice-covered rocks, "Follow me," he said. "It's warmer inside." She hesitated, then took her first step into the unknown, her heart pounding, her hands clenched. This was the bargain she never agreed to, but it was the life she had now, and somewhere deep inside, she made a silent promise. She would survive this, whatever. It took *. The wind howled across the frozen plain as Nerea followed Elias Vorn through a narrow path between towering rocks. Her robe dragged in the snow, and her fingers ached from the cold, but she said nothing. Her pride wouldn't allow her to show weakness, not in front of a human, not even this one. Elias didn't speak. He walked with calm steps, like a man who had walked this path 1,000 times. His metal glove made a soft clicking noise every time it moved. The silence between them felt heavier than the snow on her shoulders. After a few minutes, they reached a steel door set into the side of a mountain. Elias pressed his hand to a scanner, and with a hiss, the door opened. A wave of warm air rushed out, carrying the scent of old metal and burning wood. Inside, Elias said softly. Without looking at her, Nerea stepped in cautiously. The space was large but simple, a wide room with stone walls, a metal ceiling, and lights that flickered dimly in the center. A fire crackled in a small furnace. Around it were machines, weapons, and pieces of armor she didn't recognize. This was not a home, it was a fortress. Elias removed his coat and hung it on a hook underneath. He wore a dark uniform with several scars across the fabric and more across his skin. His left arm was entirely mechanical, detailed, and strong. Her eyes lingered on it for a moment before she looked away. "You can stay in that room," Elias said, pointing to a small door on the side. "It's clean, there's food and clothes inside." He didn't smile, he didn't come closer. He simply stood like a wall, waiting for her to decide. Nerea walked slowly to the door, opened it, and stepped inside. The room was plain, with a bed, a table, and a heater. On the bed lay a folded blanket, 2 changes of clothes, and a note. "You are not my prisoner." The note read, "You are safe here. Eat, rest. No one will touch you." Her hands trembled as she held the paper. The words were short, but they hit her harder than any weapon. This man, this human, was not what she expected. She sat on the bed and stared at the wall for a long time. Her people told her humans were aggressive, selfish, hungry for power and flesh, but this one had shown her nothing but quiet distance. He didn't even look at her the way others did. Later, she stepped out of the room. Drawn by the smell of cooked meat, Elias was in the kitchen area, placing food on 2 metal plates. He looked over and said, "You're not allergic to Tehran. Beef, are you?" She shook her head slowly. He nodded and placed the plate on the table, then sat at the far end, leaving space between them. They ate in silence, the only sound coming from the fire and the wind outside the walls. "Why did you agree to this?" she finally asked, her voice soft but firm. Elias looked at his plate for a long time. "Because your father begged," he replied. "Because I've seen worse things done to women who didn't have a choice." She blinked, surprised. "So? You feel pity for me?" "No," he said. "I just didn't want to be another monster in your story." Nerea looked at him, searching for lies in his face, but found none. There was no lust, no cruelty. Only a tired man with old wounds in his eyes. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay under the blanket, listening to the sound of the wind and the distant clicking of machines. At one point, she got up and walked quietly to the main room. Elias was there, sitting by the fire, fixing a broken rifle. "You don't sleep?" she asked. "Not much," he said without looking up. "Bad dreams." She sat across from him, watching his hands move with care and precision. "Were you a soldier?" she asked. "I was," he answered. "Long time ago, before they left me here." "Left you?" She frowned. "I volunteered for this post," he said. "They just didn't bother to bring me back." Silence filled the room again. But it was softer now, less sharp. Nerea looked around, seeing the small signs of his life-old books, worn boots, a cracked photo frame with faces she didn't recognize. "You don't talk much," she said. Elias finally looked at her, his eyes meeting hers for the first time with true focus. "I talk when it matters." She didn't know why, but that answer made her feel safe. When she returned to her room, she closed the door gently. She sat on the bed and stared at the note again. This wasn't what she expected. Not a cage, not a trap, not even a cold marriage filled with duty. This was something different. She didn't understand it yet, but deep inside her heart, the fear was beginning to fade. For 2 days, Nerea didn't see much of Elias Forn. He was always busy either outside checking the perimeter or inside repairing old weapons and machines. He barely spoke, but every time she entered a room, he would quietly leave her food or give her space. He treated her like someone fragile, but not in a way that made her feel weak. It was strange. On Zheria, warriors earned respect with strength and boldness. Here, this human earned hers with silence and kindness. She didn't know what to make of him. It made her feel confused, angry and oddly safe. On the third morning, she woke up early. The heater in her room hummed softly, and snowflakes tapped on the small window. She wrapped herself in a blanket and walked into the main room, hoping to warm her hands by the fire. But this time, Elias was already there for the first time. He wasn't wearing his heavy coat or armor. He stood near the fire, shirt rolled up, his back turned to her. A long scar ran down his spine. His right shoulder had a strange tattoo of a human eagle with a sword through it. But what caught her breath was not the scar or the tattoo, it was the pain in his posture, the way he stood like someone carrying invisible weight. When he turned and saw her, he froze for a moment. Then he picked up his shirt and pulled it back. "Didn't hear you come in," he said calmly. "I didn't mean to intrude," she said quickly, stepping back. "You didn't," he replied, then motioned toward the fire. "You're cold? Come closer." She did, slowly. Sitting across from him on the other side of the fire pit, the flames danced between them, and for the first time, they looked at each other without walls between them. "I keep wondering," she said quietly, "why you agreed to take me in. You say it's not pity, not duty. Then what is it?" Elias leaned back, his eyes on the fire. "After the war, I lost everything. My squad, my family, my home. The only thing I had left was my name, and that didn't mean much out here." He paused, then continued, "When your father contacted Earth's command, no one wanted the deal. They thought it was a trick or a trap. But I remember Zherians from the war. They fought with honor, I thought. Maybe I could give someone a better end than I had." Nerea looked at him, surprised by the honesty. "You risked this for a stranger." Elias met her eyes. "I didn't see a stranger. I saw someone who deserved a choice. Even if the world didn't give her one." His words struck something deep in her chest. She looked down, unsure what to say. Then, softly, she asked, "Do you still want this marriage?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Only if you do, I won't touch you. I won't claim anything. Unless you choose it, you're not a prisoner here. Nerea, I'll protect you. But I'll never own you." Her breath caught in her throat. It was the first time someone said her name gently, not as a command or a warning, just softly. She stood and walked to the window, snow still falling outside like soft feathers. "My people don't believe in human kindness," she whispered. "They say humans only take, destroy, and pretend to care. And what do you believe?" Elias asked from behind her. She turned and looked at him. Really looked at him, his tired eyes, the way he stood without pride, without shame, I think. She said slowly, "I was wrong. That evening, something shifted between them. Not spoken, not touched, just a feeling. like the snow outside had melted just a little. Later, while Elias was repairing a drone at the workbench, Nerea sat nearby and watched. "Can I help?" she asked. He glanced at her, then handed her a tool. "Hold this, and don't let the wire touch the coil." She did as told, watching his hands move with care. She noticed how gentle he was with machines, like he respected even the smallest parts. She wondered if he would ever touch a person the same way. After a while, the drone lit up with a small beep. Elias gave a rare smile, not wide, but enough to soften his face. "Not bad," he said. "Maybe you've got an engineer's heart," she smiled back, the corner of her lips curling in surprise. "Or maybe I'm just curious about humans." "Fair enough." He chuckled quietly. That night, before going to her room, she stopped in the hallway and looked back at him. "Elias," she said, her voice low. He looked up from the table. "Yes." "Thank you," she said, "for not being what I feared." He nodded. "Good night, Nerea." As she closed the door behind her, her heart beat differently, like it was waking up after a long sleep. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time, she hoped for it. This place was cold. The walls were metal. The winds howled outside, but somehow, here, she didn't feel alone anymore. The snowstorm came without warning. Thick clouds swallowing the sky above Outpost 9. Winds roared outside the metal walls, shaking them like paper. But inside, the small fortress stood strong, wrapped in warmth and silence. Elias worked by the fire, sorting parts for a broken generator. Nerea sat nearby, watching him with growing interest. She had stopped seeing him as just a human. He was something more now, something calm in the chaos. "Why do you fix everything yourself?" she asked, breaking the silence. Elias glanced up, wiping his hands with a rag. "Out here, no one comes to help. You fix it, or you freeze." She nodded slowly, then smiled a little. "That's very human of you," he chuckled softly, "and very Zherian of you to insult and compliment in one sentence." She laughed for the first time since arriving. A small sound, but real. Elias looked at her, then not as a guest, not as a stranger, but as someone learning to live. Later that day, the power flickered, and the lights went dark. Elias moved quickly, grabbing a toolkit and heading to the basement hatch. Nerea followed, without asking, curiosity glowing in her eyes. "You don't have to come," Elias said. "It's just a short tour." "Want to learn," she said firmly. The basement was colder, filled with old cables and humming machines. Elias opened a panel, sparks flashing. As he worked, Nerea handed him tools, memorizing each one's name. When the lights came back on, she smiled, proud of the small part she played. Back upstairs, Elias lit an old oil lamp and placed it on the table. They ate dinner in the warm orange glow, the fire crackling beside them. The silence between them felt comfortable, now not empty, just quiet understanding. After eating, Elias reached into a metal box and pulled out a strange object, 2 wooden sticks chained together by a short cord. "What's that?" Nerea asked, eyes narrowing. "These," he said with a grin, "nunchucks, old earth weapon. I found them in a wrecked training hall." He stood and gave a slow demonstration, swinging them carefully, then twirling them behind his back. He moved with control. But the last spin slapped his own leg, and he winced. Nerea burst into laughter, full and loud. Elias looked at her in surprise, then laughed too, rubbing his leg. "That was terrible," she said between giggles. "Your ancestors would be ashamed." He bowed with mock seriousness. "I'll have you know, I passed the online test with a perfect score." They laughed until their stomachs hurt, and for the first time, Elias saw her without sadness in her eyes, just light. Later, by the fire, she pulled her hair loose and began braiding it with quick fingers. Elias watched quietly, then reached out. "May I try?" Nerea raised an eyebrow. "You braid hair?" "I've seen a video," he said with a smirk. She turned her back to him and sat down cross-legged. Handing him a small tie, he fumbled at first, his fingers too large, too rough, but he tried. After a few crooked twists, he paused. "This is harder than it looks," he muttered. She laughed again, and her voice was soft when she said, "It's fine. I like it messy." He finished the braid and tied it carefully, then sat beside her without a word. They stared into the fire, both wondering what this quiet closeness meant. "I've never had this before," she whispered. "Peace. Warmth. Someone who sees me." Elias turned to her, his voice low. "Neither have I." She leaned her head against his shoulder. Just for a moment, his body tensed, then relaxed. The warmth between them was more than fire now. It was something human. Something real. Suddenly, the old radio on. The shelf crackled to life, a low static filling the room. Elias stood and adjusted the dial. A signal coming through, Outpost 9, status report. A voice said in a gruff tone. Elias replied, "This is 9, all clear. Storm incoming, no threats detected, copy. Next check-in in 72 hours, the voice responded. Then the signal went dead. Nerea looked at him. "How often do they contact you?" "Every few days," he said, "to make sure I'm still alive." "Do they know I'm here?" "They know," Elias said. "But no one cares, as far as they're concerned. I'm a relic guarding a dead border, and you're a paid debt." "Not a person," she frowned. "That's not fair." He shrugged. "Out here, fairness doesn't mean much, only choices do." She stood and walked toward the hallway, then stopped and looked back at him. "Then I choose to stay, not because I'm forced, but because I feel safe." Elias didn't move, didn't speak, but a small smile crept onto his face. Real, soft, and full of something she'd never seen in him before. Hope, as she disappeared into her room. Elias stared at the fire. His fingers rested on the braid he had tried to make, crooked and imperfect, but still there, that night. For the first time in years, Elias Vaughan slept without nightmares. And somewhere in the snow-covered silence outside, a new beginning had quietly taken root. The sky was clear again, the storm gone, and the cold winds had calmed. Snow sparkled like tiny diamonds outside the outpost walls. Inside, Nerea helped Elias organize the storage room, sorting old tools, cables, and crates of dusty equipment. They worked quietly, moving around each other like a team, not strangers anymore. Each glance shared between them held comfort, not fear. Elias even smiled more often now. And Nerea no longer watched the door like a prisoner waiting to run. She had stopped counting the days because they no longer felt like a sentence. But peace doesn't last forever. It began with a noise of faint hum in the air. Elias paused, his eyes narrowing. He grabbed a handheld scanner and walked to the main control panel near the front wall. Nerea followed, her heart suddenly tight in her chest. "What is it?" she asked. Elias tapped a few buttons, then frowned. "Incoming shuttle, low altitude, no ID code." "That's not a supply ship." Her blood ran cold. "Zherian," she whispered. He looked at her. "Could be." A few minutes later, a sleek silver vessel appeared over the ridge, its engines quiet but powerful. It landed near the outpost entrance, snow blowing everywhere in its wake. Elias locked down the control room, activated the defense shields, and handed Nerea a small plasma pistol. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. She nodded, her hands steady despite the pounding in her chest. She wasn't afraid of battle, she was afraid of who might be coming. The outpost doors slid open slowly, and a figure stepped inside, tall, armored, and with glowing red eyes beneath his mask. But Nerea recognized him instantly. General Vezin. He removed his helmet and smiled with sharp, cruel confidence. "So it's true," he said. His voice smooth like poisoned wine. The princess hides among humans. Nerea stood tall, not flinching. I don't hide. Vezan, I live. He laughed darkly. Is that what you call this? Living in a metal cave with a broken human. Elias stepped forward, his voice calm but heavy. State your business, General. Vezan turned to him, his eyes narrowing. You must be the one who accepted the bargain. Elias Vorn, war hero. Of Earth, Elias gave a slight nod, and protector of this outpost, you're trespassing? Vezan ignored the warning. Walking slowly around the room, you know Elias. Her family didn't mention she was a warrior. They offered her like livestock, and you accepted. How noble. Elias didn't move, but the air around him grew colder. You've got 2 minutes. To explain why you're here. Vezan's smirk disappeared. Simple. I'm here to take her back. The debt is settled. She belongs to Zheria. She doesn't belong to anyone, Elias said sharply. Not anymore. Vezan's hand moved toward his weapon, but stopped halfway. You really think you can protect her from her own people? I already am, Elias, replied Vezan, turned back to Nerea. You could have had power. You could have stood at my side, but you chose this. He waved his hand at the room. A human's prison, a life in exile. Nerea lifted her chin. Eyes burning with fire, I chose freedom. I chose a man who treats me with respect, not a coward who hides behind armor and tradition. Vezan's eyes darkened, but he smiled again. You'll regret this. Princess, he said, then turned to leave. Next time, I won't knock. The doors slid shut behind him, and the shuttle lifted into the sky, vanishing into the clouds. Elias turned to Nerea, his brow tight with concern. Are you all right? She nodded, but her fists were clenched. He's not finished, she whispered. He'll be back, and next time, he'll bring more than words. Elias walked to the console and began typing commands. Then we prepare. I'll boost the shields, fix the perimeter guns, and set traps around the outpost. She placed a hand on his arm. Let me help. He looked at her. You sure? She nodded. I may be a princess, but I was trained to fight. I won't let him take this from me. Over the next few hours, they worked side by side, reinforcing the outpost like a fortress preparing for war. Nerea helped calibrate the drones, mapped blind spots, and even showed Elias hand-to-hand techniques from Zherian combat. As the sun set behind the mountains, the outpost looked different, less like a quiet place of exile, and more like a shield raised high. They ate dinner in silence that night, the table lit by a single oil lamp. Elias finally spoke. If it comes to a fight, we might not win. Nerea met his eyes. Then we make them pay for every step they take. He nodded, slowly. You've changed, so have you, she said, with a soft smile. But I think it's the kind of change worth fighting for. He reached out and gently took her hand. Just for a moment, their fingers curled together. Warm in the cold night, outside, in the darkness, storm clouds gathered again, but this time, they were ready. Asterisk, the warning lights blinked red. A drone zipped overhead, sending live footage to Elias's screen 3. Zherian attack ships were descending fast, their hulls marked with the royal sigil and Vezan's personal crest. Nerea stood beside Elias, armored in a lightweight human vest and Zherian wrist guards, her hair tied back, her eyes full of fire. They're here, Elias said, voice low. Nerea nodded. They won't talk this time. Elias powered up the external defenses, motion-activated turrets locked into position. Trap mines armed along the frozen ridge. He looked at her and said, you still have a choice. You can hide in the escape tunnel. They won't find you there. She stepped closer, voice steady. I already made my choice. Elias, I stay and I fight. For a moment, Elias didn't speak. Then he nodded and handed her a compact plasma rifle. Then we hold this place together. Outside, snow blew across the ground as the enemy landed. The silence before battle was deep, almost sacred. Then came the first sound, Vesen's voice, carried by a broadcast drone hovering above the outpost. Elias Vorn, surrender the girl, and we'll leave your bones in peace. Elias clicked off the transmission and looked at Nerea. He's such a poet, she smirked. I hope he brought more than words. Moments later, the battle began. Explosions rocked the perimeter. Laser fire flashed across the snow. The auto turrets opened fire, targeting Zherian soldiers in sleek black armor. They moved fast, using cloaking tech, but Elias had predicted that he'd added thermal sensors to the defense grid just the day before. Nerea fired from the rooftop. Covering Elias as he repaired a damaged turret, she moved with sharp grace, each shot clean, each breath steady. This wasn't the same girl who once cried behind a sealed door. This was a warrior defending her home. A group of Zherian commandos tried to breach the sidewall, but the mines activated. Blasting them back in a storm of fire and ice, Elias finished rewiring the panel just in time, sealing the breach with a pulse shield. We've got 10 minutes before the next wave, he shouted. Nerea ran to him, reloading. They're testing us, seeing how strong we are. They'll hit harder next time, Elias said. Wiping blood from a cut on his cheek, the second wave was worse. Vesen came himself. Leading the charge, he moved like a shadow, cutting down to auto drones with his energy blade. His eyes found Nerea across the snow. She dropped from the roof and landed in front of him, her rifle discarded, her blade drawn, still playing human, little princess. He sneered. No, she said, her voice steady. I'm fighting for my life, not yours. Vesen lunged. Their blades clashed, sparks flying with each strike. Nerea moved faster than he expected. Using human and Zherian styles together, a strike to his side made him stumble, but he recovered quickly, rage in his eyes. You dishonor your bloodline. He hissed. I rewrite it, she replied, her next strike knocking him to the ground. But before she could finish him, a Zherian soldier fired at her back. Elias tackled the attacker just in time. Knocking the gun away and firing a shot point blank, he turned to Nerea, panting. Are you all right? She nodded, her blade still shaking in her hand. Vesen had disappeared into the snow, crawling back toward his ship. We're not done, Elias said. Grabbing her hand, they'll retreat, but they'll come again. Stronger, she looked at him, her eyes wet but fierce. Then we'll be ready. Every time, the final wave never came. The ships lifted off without warning, retreating into the clouds. Vesen had lost more than Troopsy had lost the fight for her heart. And that wounded him more than any blade inside the outpost. The walls were scorched. But still standing, Elias and Nerea sat beside the fire again, bandaging wounds, too tired to speak. The silence returned, but this time it was full of meaning, not fear. I almost lost you, Elias said at last, voice rough. I'm still here, Nerea whispered. Because of you. He looked at her, really looked, and said, I don't care about the contract anymore. I don't care what your family said, or what the galaxy thinks. I care about you, Nerea, just you. She reached for his hand and placed it gently over her heart. Then I give you my choice, Elias, not because I owe you, but because I want to. For a long moment, they just sat there, hands joined. Snow falling outside the window like soft music. That night, no enemies came, only dreams of warmth, of peace, and of a bond stronger than blood or war. The sun rose slowly over the icy mountains, casting a golden glow across the white fields of snow inside the outpost. The fire had gone quiet, but warmth still filled the room, not from flames, but from something deeper. Elias stood near the Window, sipping hot tea from a metal mug, his wounds were healing. But the ache in his arm reminded him that the fight had been real, that the bond they built had been forged under fire. Not fantasy. Nerea stepped into the room, wrapped in a thick blanket, her hair loose. Face soft in the early light. She walked over and stood beside him, silent for a moment. They won't come back. She said, "You sound sure," Elias replied. No, Vezin, she said quietly. He fights for pride, not love. And pride doesn't return after it's broken. Elias looked at her. And you? Will you return to Zheria? She turned to face him, her voice calm. No, I made my decision the moment I lifted my blade beside you. My family sold me. Vezin hunted me, but you gave me space, and choice, and honor. She took his hand gently. I may be Zherian by blood, but here, ... with you. I feel free. They stood together in the silence, the kind that didn't need words outside. Snow began to fall again, but this time it felt more like a blessing than a storm. Days passed, they rebuilt the damage slowly. Fixing broken walls and cleaning out scorched halls, Nerea began helping more with the machines, learning how to program drones and maintain systems. Elias taught her with patience, often smiling when she caught on faster than expected. In return, she showed him how to wield a blade with grace, how to read ancient Zherian texts, and how to braid hair properly this time. Without tangling it into a knot, they laughed more. A new peace had settled over the outpost. One made not of silence, but of understanding, kindness, and small moments, shared by choice. Then, one morning, a message arrived. A neutral diplomatic ship hovered overhead and sent down a single communication package. Elias opened it while Nerea watched from the table. It was a scroll, bound in red silk, with her family's crest printed in gold. She read it slowly, lips pressed tight. Then she folded it and set it on fire, letting the flames consume it in the metal dish nearby. They say the debt is fully paid, she said. They won't call for me again, they offered. A formal welcome back, if I agreed to leave you? Elias looked at her, unsure what to say. I refused. She said before he could speak, I don't need their honor anymore. I found my own. Elias stood, walking slowly toward her. Then, maybe it's time we stopped calling this a debt or a contract. She tilted her head. What would you call it? He took her hands, holding them gently. A beginning, if you'll have it. Nerea smiled, and for the first time, tears in her eyes were not from pain, but joy. That evening, they stood outside under the stars, a small flame flickering between them. The snow was light and the wind soft. Elias wore a dark coat with a silver thread on the shoulder. Nerea wore a Zherian ceremonial wrap. Redesigned in human colors, it was not a grand wedding. There were no guests, no royal blessings, no loud music, only them, and a promise. I vow to stand with you, Elias said. Voice quiet, not because I was told to, but because I choose you again. And every day, Nerea looked up at him, her voice strong. I vow to walk beside you. Through war, through snow, through silence. I vow to protect what we built here, and what we'll build next. They sealed the vow with a soft kiss, not rushed, not unsure, but steady, sure, and full of everything words couldn't say. Later that night, they sat near the fire again. Elias resting with his head on her lap, Nerea running her fingers through his hair gently. He looked up at her and smiled. Funny, he said. They thought this would be a cage, and they were wrong. She whispered, it was a door, and we walked through it together. Outside, the stars burned bright, the sky wide and open. The war was over, but something much stronger had begun. Not a forced alliance, not a bargain of survival, but a love built slowly, carefully, a bond not made by blood or species, but by choice. And in that cold, distant outposts, forgotten by empires, a human and an alien girl began their own quiet empire, one of trust, of freedom, of firelight and smiles that no one else could take away.